Effects of poverty on violence. The effects of poverty on violence are becoming more and more known by sociologists and criminologists. And it has been proven through studies that people from poor areas are more likely to commit crimes, despite their background and other factors. Poverty has reached historic new highs in the United States, with 46.5 million people now living in poor households. Substance abuse frequently accompanies poverty and is often exacerbated by it. The multiple effects of poverty on violence can be reduced through addressing these issues at both the community and societal levels. Effects of poverty on violence against women. Poverty has many negative effects, but perhaps the most devastating is how it fosters violence against women. Most of the countries where violence and abuse are commonplace are also among the world's poorest. Women and children living in poverty suffer the effects of violence directly, while their poverty compounds a cycle of poverty and abuse. Poverty is critical in understanding violence against women. Though it may not always be the direct cause of violence, poverty creates an environment that facilitates violence against women and interrupts their ability to obtain safety and justice. Poverty is a significant contributing factor to violence. In a recent study, Durbar and colleagues sought to identify the effects of poverty on violence against women. They found that higher levels of poverty are associated with more incidents of intimate partner violence, particularly among younger women. Effects of poverty on violence. Effects of poverty on violence against children. Children in poverty may be more likely to experience violence, both as victims and perpetrators, than children in wealthier households. This wide-ranging review examines the effects of poverty on children's exposure to violence. Poverty is a state of deprivation characterized by severe constraints on choice and capacity to participate effectively in society. Effects on violence against children. Children are directly affected by poverty in the forms of malnutrition, infectious diseases, and poor access to medical care and education. Children who live in these harsh conditions are themselves vulnerable to violence and abuse. Child abuse is variously defined as direct physical or psychological maltreatment or neglect of a child. Physical abuse may be unintentional, but it violates the basic need for protection from violence that every human being has a right to claim. However, economic conditions may affect children's allocation to resources such as health care. Effects of poverty on violence against men. Focusing on the effect of poverty on the rate of domestic violence against men in various countries with different levels of status, the results reveal that when a country has a high level of poverty, the rate of domestic violence against men will increase. Research has shown that poverty can be a leading cause of violence against men. Many researchers have found that poverty is a strong contributor to men being involved in violent crimes. This can occur in various ways, ranging from chronic low-level violence, such as robbery and assault, to gang violence and other more severe, high-level crimes. Effects of poverty on violence against transgender. Poverty is a complex, the multifaceted issue with many causes. But despite its complexity, the effects of poverty on violence against transgender people and the transgender community are clear. The effects of poverty on violence against transgender individuals are often underestimated. Poverty is a prevalent issue for transgender people, who experience intense discrimination and limited options for employment and educational opportunities. Furthermore, the social services often provide housing that does not feel safe with adults or children living in the house. This can cause many to resort to prostitution and drug use, which leaves them at risk for violence from their clients or the police. There are several governmental agencies available to help victims of domestic abuse and sexual assault, yet, most of these are located in urban areas, leaving those in rural areas without as many services available to them. Effects of poverty on violence against babies. Violence was measured in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas across the city of Los Angeles, as well as within families with many other risk factors for child abuse. The results showed that living in an affluent area in socioeconomic terms is more harmful than beneficial to a child's physical safety from violence. Results of a study by UNICEF indicate that child poverty is directly related to increased violence against infants. The study, entitled The State of the World's Children 2006 and conducted in 23 countries, found that children from poor families are more likely to experience violence at home than those from wealthier families. Poverty does not have to mean initializing children. Effects of poverty on violence against elderly. Violence against the elderly is a serious problem, especially in developing countries and low-income countries. It often becomes worse when older people are poor. Effects of poverty on violence against the elderly, including explanations for these effects, evidence that supports these arguments and policies that could be implemented to address cases of violence against the elderly stemming from poverty. When people are poor and don't have much, they often turn to violence as a way to resolve their disputes. This is related especially to the elderly because they often don't have much family and friends to rely on. In addition, they are seen as more vulnerable by criminals. If they are not able to afford proper living situations and cannot provide themselves with sufficient amounts of food, they will be more likely to be assaulted. Effects of poverty on violence against animals. Johns Hopkins University researchers have discovered that there is a direct correlation between poverty and violence in the form of animal cruelty. The authors of the study found that people who live in poverty are more likely to both witness and engage in violent acts against animals. The researchers examined data from the National Epidemiologic Survey on Alcohol and Related Conditions, including survey responses from over 35,000 adults over a period of 5 years. Poverty is one of the main contributing factors driving violence against animals. In poor communities, people react to extreme and sustained food scarcity by turning to the natural world for a source of subsistence, but with little regard for the long-term ecosystem implications.